All right, we're going to call the meeting of the Finance Committee to order on March 20th, 2024. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman Thibodeau? Here. Alderman Govea is here. Alderman Moran?
He is going to be absent. He's got a family activity, he told me, so he could not make it.
Alderwoman Timmons?
Here.
Alderman Clemens?
Here.
Alderman Clee?
Here.
Mayor Dodges?
Here. All right, first item is public comment related to items on the agenda. Is there any member of the public who would like to speak to the committee? No one is here, so we'll go on to communications. The first from Amy Gerard, Purchasing Manager, Alderman Govea.
In regard to contract for engineering services in the amount of $137,247, funded from 53107 Architect and Engineering Services / Grant and Capital. I'll make a motion to approve and award a contract for engineering services with CMA Engineer Incorporated of Manchester, New Hampshire in the amount not to exceed $137,246 for the engineering study and management of the Locke Street and Whitney Street pedestrian and bicycle improvement project. Funding will be through Department 181 Community Development, Fund 53107, Architect and Engineering Services / Grant Capital.
Mr. Saunders.
Good evening, Mark Saunders, Deputy City Engineer. I'm here tonight in regards to the engineering contract with CMA in regards to the Locke and Whitney project. A quick brief history. This is this started off as a transportation alternative grant back in 2018 as the project kind of got going. COVID happened and it stalled out. So this grant, the funding requirements are an 80-20 match, and the project is a bike and pedestrian improvement project. It looks to tackle portions of Lowell, Locke, and Whitney streets, and the intent is sidewalks, bike lanes, traffic calming, and looking at traffic patterns. This is for the engineering study, which is the first phase of the PE, so there will be additional amendments to this contract to get us through the whole entire design phase, but the engineering study on a project like this is the largest section of that design phase. Other than that, I'll open it up to questions.
Alderwoman Clee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not so much that I have questions as I just want to speak to the public about this particular thing. And as it was stated, in 2018, the city received a $1 million grant, 80-20 split, and we have been waiting for the money to come. And as I tell everybody, little glitch and hiccup in our society happened called COVID, and that kind of put everything on the back burner. And I'm so happy to see that we're finally being able to move forward. It was my first term. I'm now in my fourth term, and we're starting to see this. So to me, it's very, very exciting. I guess the only question I have is this is just the start of the project, and as it goes on, we have to get do we have to get state approval with every step that we're taking because of this grant, or how will the next steps happen?
Yes, absolutely. Any LPA project, we are the sub-recipient of the grant. It's run through the DOT, and every step along the way we need a notice to proceed. So once we finalize the engineering study, we'll then need a notice to proceed to go to preliminary design. As that happens, we then go to final design, bidding, construction, so on and so forth. So every step it is lock in step with the DOT, and CMA will be the engineer behind this project.
May I continue?
Yes.
Thank you. And just again, for the public, the way that this was originally thought out and planned was that Locke Street would become a one-way from Chandler towards Concord Street area that way. It's already partially a one-way that way, and then Whitney would become the return. Both would have a full bike lane, and sidewalks on both sides of the streets would be widened. One, to the point of try as much as possible to ADA compliance, but anybody who lives or walks down Locke Street knows that there are telephone poles, fire hydrants, etc., including sometimes some people's steps from their home into the sidewalk. So as much as possible, the way it currently works, again, for those that aren't from the that area, the Whitney Locke Street, is that if people have mobility issues, wheelchairs, motorized or whatever, baby carriages, in order to continue down that, they have to find a driveway to honestly get out onto the street to get to the next driveway when there's because there are no tip downs on the curbs and so on. And I want to commend everybody who worked on this, but Director Photo, who one of my very first walks with her, we walked down this street and she looked and took notes and saw and realized that this was a real problem. And the children use this to walk to school and so on. So it's extraordinarily important, and I want to thank everybody that's working toward this. So thank you.
Anyone else? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next communication is from Amy Gerard, Purchasing Manager, Alderman Govea.
In regard to contract for unleaded fuel in the amount of $2.5484 per gallon, funded from 61300 unleaded fuel / general fund. I'm going to make a motion to accept, place on file, and award a contract for the purchase of an estimated annual usage of 218,296 gallons of unleaded fuel from Global Montello Group in the amount of $2.5484 per gallon, approximately $556,325.17. Funding will be through Department 130 Purchasing, Fund 61300 Unleaded Fuel / General Fund.
Ms. Gerard?
Thank you. Amy Gerard, Purchasing Manager. So we have gone out to bid for unleaded fuel that's utilized by many departments within the city. Purchasing received 5 bids for this purchase. The cost for FY25 will be $2.5484 per gallon, which is down 16 cents year over year, resulting in a cost savings of approximately $35,000 from FY24. Global Montello holds the current contract, and we believe they're a responsible and responsive fuel provider, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Next communication from Amy Gerard, Purchasing Manager, Alderman Govea.
In regard to contract for professional engineering services in the amount of $650,403, funded from 55699 other contracted services / Riverfront TIF Fund. I'm going to make a motion to accept, place on file, and approve a professional engineering services contract for construction administrative services for the Riverfront Boardwalks project with HL Turner Group LLC in the amount of $650,403. Funding will be through Department 183 Economic Development, Fund 55699, other contracted services / Riverfront TIF Fund.
Ms. DeRoche?
Good evening. Amy DeRoche, Economic Development Project Manager. This is for a construction administration for the boardwalks and also for the substation screening foundations that are going to be installed. They will be reviewing all shop drawings, responding to contractor questions, and dealing with fabrication visits and the steel framing and the handrails and such. They will also be managing geotech through their sub SLR, who will be overseeing the boring program, including like barge and water safety, and drill shaft inspections and concrete testing.
Any questions, comments? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next communication from Amy Gerard, Purchasing Manager, Alderman Govea.
In regard to professional engineering services in the amount of $95,000, funded from 55699 other contracted services / Riverfront TIF. I'm going to make a motion to accept, place on file, and approve a contract for construction administration services for the Riverfront Parks project with Weston and Sampson Engineers in the amount of $95,000. Funding will be through Department 183 Economic Development, Fund 55699, other contracted services / Riverfront TIF Fund.
So Amy DeRoche, Economic Development. Weston and Sampson will have the contract administration for the oversight of the construction for Renaissance and Bicentennial Parks. They'll be out in the field reviewing, grading to make sure that it meets, accessibility code requirements. They'll be dealing with observing all of the finishing of all the work and the hardscaping and the planting installations, as well as drainage and irrigation, and they'll have some geotech involved with like pile installations in the parks.
All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next, communication from Amy Gerard, Purchasing Manager, Alderman Govea.
In regard to professional engineering services in the amount of $1,246,460, funded from 53107 Architect and Engineering Services / Riverfront TIF Fund, I'm going to make a motion to accept, place on file, and approve a contract for project management and construction administration services of the Riverfront project with Hayner Swanson Incorporated in the amount of $1,246,460. Funding will be through Department 183 Economic Development, Fund 53107, Architect and Engineering Services / Riverfront TIF Fund.
Amy DeRoche, Economic Development. Hayner Swanson, they've actually been part of this project for many years now, and it would be remiss if I didn't say that they've been an indispensable partner to the city in this project. This contract is a continuation of their current, which includes overall project management. You can see their scope in your packet is quite extensive to what they will be doing on this project. But it includes, management of the consultants and the contractors, coordinating with the butters and utilities, tracking project costs and schedules, et cetera. It's quite a lot that they're going to be doing on this project.
Anyone? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next, communication from Amy Gerard, Purchasing Manager, Alderman Govea.
In regard to contract for construction services in the amount of $3,688,897, funded from 81700 Infrastructure Improvement / Riverfront TIF Fund, I'm going to make a motion to accept, place on file, and approve a contract for construction services for the Riverfront project for Renaissance and Bicentennial Parks with Moran's Landscaping in the amount of $3,688,897. Funding will be through Department 183 Economic Development, Fund 81700 Infrastructure Improvements / Riverfront TIF Fund.
Amy DeRoche, Economic Development. This went out to bid on January 19th for the park construction. We received 2 submissions. The city team, along with Hayner Swanson and Weston and Sampson, who are the architects, interviewed both companies. There was a gap, quite large gap between the two, and even though this was a low bid process, we did want to make sure that we chose the most qualified person. Moran's has been very responsive to all of our questions, and we feel very comfortable that they will deliver a wonderful project at the end of the construction process.
All right. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next, communication from Amy Gerard, Purchasing Manager, Alderman Govea.
In regard to contracting for construction services in the amount of $7,970,090, funded from 81700 Infrastructure Improvements / Riverfront TIF Fund. I'm going to make a motion to accept, place on file, and approve a contract for construction services for the Riverfront project boardwalk construction with Sea and Shore Contracting in the amount of $7,970,090. Funding will be through Department 183 Economic Development, Fund 81700 Infrastructure Improvements / Riverfront TIF Fund.
Amy DeRoche, Economic Development. This was also put out in an RFP that was issued on January 19th. This was the only bid that came in. This is a very complicated job. The city team, including HSI and the boardwalk engineers, H.L. Turner, did interview them, and we did more than one site visit to talk through the various potential complications that they might arise and how we can work through those. Sea and Shore has a very large background in this type of work, and we know that they will be a great partner on this project. One thing I would like to forecast on this is there will be a forthcoming change order on this contract. At the time that this went out, the foundations for the substation screening were not complete, and it was always envisioned that the same contractor, due to the very small construction space, would have to do both projects. We've spoken to Sea and Shore. They're in the process of reviewing everything and coming up with a quote, but I just wanted to forecast that this might be something that is coming up in the future. Happy to answer any questions.
Anyone? All right. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you very much. Next communication from Amy Gerard, Purchasing Manager, Alderman Govea.
In regard to contract for diesel fuel in the amount of $2.9348 per gallon funded from 61307 diesel fuel / general fund. I'm going to make a motion to accept, place on file, and award a contract for the purchase of an estimated annual usage of 146,672 gallons of diesel fuel from Santa Buckley Energy in the amount of $2.9348 per gallon, approximately $430,452.99. Funding will be through Department 130 Purchasing Fund 61307 Diesel Fuel / General Fund.
Ms. Gerard?
Thank you. Amy Gerard, Purchasing Manager. The Purchasing Department issued a bid for diesel fuel that's utilized by multiple departments within the city. Purchasing received 6 bids for this purchase with a cost of $2.9348 per gallon, which is an increase of less than 2 cents per gallon for fiscal year 24, resulting in an increase of approximately $2,625. The city has never utilized Santa Buckley Energy before. I did do extensive reference checks and believe that they are qualified and will be a responsive vendor. Happy to answer any questions.
All right. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Next communication from Amy Gerard, Purchasing Manager, Alderman Govea.
In regard to change order 4 and 5 for Jackson Mill Turbine in the amount of $78,117.91, funded from 81700 Infrastructure Improvements / Bond. I'm going to make a motion to approve change order 4 to cover the electric and mechanical work required for the switchgear building in the amount of $31,829, and change order 5 to address the repairs required for the cofferdam, both with Bancroft Contracting in the amount of $46,288.91 for a total of $78,117.91. Funding will be through Department 170 Hydraulic Operations, Fund 81700 Infrastructure Improvement / Bond.
Ms. Chisholm?
Hi, good evening. Deb Chisholm, Sustainability Department Manager. A couple of change orders in front of you right now for the existing contract we have with Bancroft Contracting Corporation. They are the contractor that is doing the demolition and installation of new equipment for the Jackson Mills hydroelectric facility. If you've been down in that area right now, you can see the cofferdam that is currently existing. We've had a bit of a time trying to keep that thing in place. And so one of the change orders in front of you tonight, change order 5, is for additional labor and materials to repair damage to the cofferdam from recent rainstorms. The other is for the new switchgear building that is in place. We had one of our previous change orders was for the actual construction of the switchgear building, and it was the electrical and mechanical work was believed to have been under a different contract, but it was not, so my bad. So that building is actually being constructed by Bancroft Contracting. So we've got our electrical permit into the building department as we speak. So that's what that additional change order is for as well.
Anybody? All right, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Very much. Next communication from Amy Gerard, Purchasing Manager, Alderman Govea.
In regard to software and licensing fee in the amount of $48,124.01, funded from 54407 Software Maintenance / FTA Grant Funds and Local Match. I'm going to make a motion to approve a contract for Nashua Transit System annual software support and licensing fee using a federal grant and local match funds in the amount of $48,124.01. Funding will be through Department 186 Transportation, Fund 54407, Software Maintenance / FTA Grant Funds, and local match.
Director Sullivan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the committee. Matt Sullivan, Community Development Director. This is an annual software licensing request for the Route Match software owned by parent company Uber. This specific software is the foundation upon which both the fixed route service, transportation service, and bus service, and the demand response services operate across the city of Nashua and within the Nashua region. Specifically, this software provides all of the route mapping, scheduling, and pickup guidance that the bus drivers depend on and our dispatchers depend on as well to ensure that the service is provided in a timely and reliable manner. This is a slight increase from prior years of licensing, and again, it includes really three components: hosting, the demand response piece, and the fixed route piece, but a modest increase based on other software licensing costs that we're seeing across other sections of the division's work. Happy to answer any questions that the committee has.
Alderman Thibodeau.
So you had mentioned this is an annual, this is a slight increase, but an annual thing. Is it always taken through, funded through a grant?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
That's correct, Alderman Thibodeau. The transportation system funding is actually very interesting, and I can get into detail maybe another time about this, but the system is funded predominantly through Federal Transit Administration grants. The city provides a local match that matches some of the funding, both for capital planning and operations. But typically, yes, this money is taken from an FTA operating grant that is awarded to the city on an annual basis through the Transit Administration.
Follow. Do we know what the impact would be to rates and stuff like that if it was to become more of a self-sustaining entity for the city?
Happy to address that. I think I'd be stretching the truth a bit if I said I knew the full impacts. What I do know is that Route Match, and you'll see this sort of in the documentation supporting this, it's a bit of a sole source support that we have right now for our routes. We have built a lot of information for Route Match's platform. A lot of our real-time bus location and other information feeds directly through that platform. But we actually are in the process right now of soliciting an entirely new technology package across the Nashua transit system that includes not only this specific route software, but also things that would allow our customers to see better real-time bus location, to purchase tickets in new ways. And so we're actually working on just what you're suggesting, and that is going to an alternative platform. I will say it's very unlikely that we would move in the direction of bringing this internally from a programming perspective and from a platform perspective. These real-time bus and other bus routing softwares are fairly specialized, and so this is certainly no slight to our IT department, but we rely on those that are providing these softwares nationally that sort of understand the industry best practices and the federal reporting needs. So it's likely we're going to go with a national vendor when we go through the selection process.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So my questioning intent was that the transit system could have afford it without the grant is where I was kind of heading.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, not changing the vendor or the source of the technology, but
Sure. Yep. So again, I think maybe getting into the way that the transit system is funded, the funds are really sort of mixed in together into one pool when they come from both the city through its local match, through the FTA, the federal transit funds that come in, and then from a couple other funding sources, and that even includes the fares that are paid go sort of directly back into the transit system. In some ways, transit runs as an enterprise fund in a sense, although with a local allocation from the city of Nashua on an annual basis. And so to answer your question, it's possible that we could have used local match only to pay for this licensing. But ultimately, we would just end up using that local match for something else, another purchase or providing the transit service itself at a later time in the future. So although we're taking it from the grant, we would ultimately be taking something else from the grant if we didn't take the software licensing from it. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but these monies will get used in one way or another, whether for operating service for the drivers or for supporting a software purchase of this type.
Anything else?
all set.
Alderwoman Clee.
Thank you, Director Sullivan. I have two questions. One, my first question is, when you talk about the software, I love the software that we have on our website where someone can put where they want to go, and it kind of helps them navigate where they have to be at what time and so on. So is this all part of that package?
That's actually, Alderman Clee, that's actually a different suite of software run through what we call a GTFS system. What I would sort of identify as the core service of this is this actually provides our bus drivers with real-time location and other information and gives them routing directions in the event that changes need to happen, keeps them on time, makes sure they're aware of their schedule, and then also alerts them of other dispatching changes that may need to be made. It's also a part of the fare collection sort of counting that we do. We have a couple of different fare types, and we monitor all those as part of our regular service. This allows them to select the appropriate fare based on who gets on the bus. But it's not related to necessarily the tools that are deployed through the website. That's a separate suite of tools that we use, most of which are actually free.
Yeah, and I appreciate those tools that are on there. It does help others. I know recently we heard from through the E-code thing where someone was said very specifically, let's shut down the buses, they're not filled enough.
Mm-hmm.
The type of people that take these buses are usually more of a low income or people that don't have alternate means for whatever their reasons are to get from point A to point B. The comment was, should we shrink down our buses? If we did that, and the only reason I'm bringing that up is based on the software and so on, would that allow more buses on the road to do different trips? Or are you finding that through this software, and that's, I guess, what I'm going to ask you, is the counts appropriate to where we're going? I know it was a hard question.
No, that's okay. I think there are a few
coming out as I was
there are a few
thinking.
Questions in there, and I may go a little bit out of order responding.
Sure, that's okay.
You know, one of the challenges with providing a bus service is that we sort of have to provide vehicle fleet based on peak demand. One situation you really don't want to be in is turning away a rider because you deployed the wrong vehicle at the wrong time. That said, we have a fairly good understanding of the ridership across certain routes. We know that the Route 6, the Route 2, to Amherst and to DW corridors, those are high ridership routes. We have to have larger buses available to do those. Whether that's a 30-footer, a 35-footer, or something else, we know that larger piece of equipment needs to be deployed there. Where it gets a little more interesting, and I think this is a longer-term conversation we should have as a city, is when you do more rural routes that have lower ridership, you can, in fact, go to smaller fleet. You're using less gas, less fuel, but you're there again introducing that risk of the idea of having to turn someone away, or if you have a paratransit passenger that takes up more seating, there might be the need to actually turn someone away from that service, and that's a huge challenge. So it's this constant sort of middle ground that you're trying to find, and so I guess I would say generally we try to deploy the largest fleet possible so that we're not turning away riders. I think what will get interesting is there's this emergent field of sort of what we call microtransit, and that is more like your Uber or your Lyft service, but provided by a public entity. So rather than a fixed bus route that someone has to be on time for, and it goes in a certain route, some of which that person may not need to travel along, you actually deploy a vehicle that is optimized based on a variety of different riders that have requested pickups. You deploy a vehicle to pick them up and then drop them off at various locations around the city. And so as part of our technology grant RFP that's out right now, we're looking with open eyes, I would say, at microtransit to replace some of our less used routes across the community. And it's likely that if we did that, we would move to smaller fleet or deploy our smaller fleet more readily for that sort of microtransit style service. So we're looking actively at the idea of making our fleet smaller, but I think what we have right now fits fairly well for our service.
May I follow up on
Yes.
that? The reason I asked that question in that particular way was that I was wondering if the software itself, because I heard you say something about that it tracks the fares or the type of fare.
Yep.
So I didn't know if there were different types of fares for different, like paratransit or something. So is it tracking that to the point where we know in a real time, okay, I don't know whether or not I would say bus full, but bus to capacity based on the type of ridership?
Yes, it does. It allows us to track a variety of different things. The demand on a given bus and how full it is. It allows us to track paratransit and fixed route riders. It also allows us to track, we have several revenue contracts built where we're giving folks from Hudson, Merrimack, or those from Riviere or NCC, we have contracts with them that allow them to ride at different rates. That's the kind of tracking I'm talking about.
Okay.
So if someone gets on and they show their RIV pass, we document that so that when we go back to RIV at the end of the year and we're negotiating a new revenue contract, we actually have the ability to tell them how frequently the service is used. They want that data before they sign a contract with us, and so that's why we do that through Route Match.
Thank you. And just one more. And the other question I have is kind of, I think what was mentioned in a previous question to you about the federal dollars and federal matching.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been of the belief that we do take the federal dollar matches when they're available, like what's happening with the Lock Street. That's a state type of thing. We take those because if we don't, it's going to be used elsewhere. Is that the same thing with these particular, this federal kind of funding? Or is it just, if we didn't use it, it goes back to the federal coffers, or does it go to another community?
So I would think of, I'm going to use a narrow example, but a couple people here were at the meeting on Monday night. In some ways, Nashua is like a CDBG entitlement community.
Right.
We receive dedicated federal funding because we offer a specific service. If we were to no longer operate the transit service, that money would be allocated elsewhere or to a different entity operating in the city of Nashua. So we're fortunate to have a Nashua transit system, and so that money does go directly to us as part of a federal allocation process. We learn on an annual basis what our allocation will be based on shifting things happening across the nation. Once we know what our allocation is, we look at what our actual operating budget is. We take the allocation of federal funds. We try to get every other pot of money available, whether that's through the state of New Hampshire or through the Bureau of Elderly Services, which I was just here last month to talk about, whether it's through the state of New Hampshire and DOT and operating funding that they provide, or whether it's through these other revenue contracts that we have. And then the gap tends to come back to the city. That's sort of the gap local operating match that needs to be provided to actually support the service. And so our budget is based on the service that the city provides, but there's several sources of revenue that then go in to support those operations.
Thank you.
Of course.
All right, any other questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Now we have without objection, we will accept a communication received after the agenda was prepared regarding an emergency change order. So we'll accept that and place it on file. If people have questions about this project, I think Director Sullivan is, or excuse me, Ms. Chisholm is very
He's throwing
capable
someone
of
else there.
answering this. They both know about it, so. Yes.
It's not so much that I have a question of it, because I think I do understand, but I did receive a kind of a frantic call from one of my constituents that said, the sky is falling, so to speak. So could you just quickly explain what has kind of happened, whether or not we're going to lose a library down the river and so on?
Deb Chisholm, Sustainability Department Manager and Manager of the Hydroelectric Project. There is some concern about erosion that is happening on the south bank of the river, just below the parking lot of the library. It is directly across from the work being done on the Jackson Mills Hydroelectric Project, where we've installed a cofferdam. The cofferdam has narrowed the width of the river, and that is then the extreme river flows and river heights that we've had for the last year. All of that water is really pushing up against that bank, as well as the cofferdam. But the bank now is eroding. It was installed in 1968, and it is protective of the 84-inch sewer interceptor that is behind that. So it is a cause of concern, and we are working as fast as we can to get a contractor out there. The approach that we're currently considering is we've hired a company out of Maine called Knowles, and they are a company that works a lot with concrete. They're going to do what many of you may have seen when you see pools being installed and you see them spraying on the gunite in the swimming pool. Same kind of thing, much larger scale, obviously. but they'll be in hopefully starting on Monday to get started. So the emergency request that was put forth was to ensure that our contractor could hire on a subcontractor, and the subcontractor could actually go out and spend money on the supplies that are necessary in order to get the project started as soon as possible.
Just quick follow-up.
Alderwoman Clee.
I know the answer to this is going to be yes, but Monday is soon enough. This is not an emergency that we need them here yesterday, correct?
Oh, we know, we would love it if they could have
Okay,
come yesterday. But to find a contractor that will drop all of their other current work to come to your project, hard to find. And this is a little bit of a specialty thing. This is not just your average person coming out and, you can't just ask a brick mason to come out and do it. It's a fairly extensive and challenging. Some of the other thoughts were to install some pilings similar to what we have at the coffer dam itself, but with the current instability of the dam, of the bank, would like to start with this, what they call shotcrete, and spray the concrete on there to hopefully stabilize things, and then fingers crossed that the water levels actually go down, and that will hopefully allow us to get a better picture of what the actual final repairs will look like.
Thank you. The call that I received was that we have barricades up there and so on, but are the library employees still allowed to park in that parking area? Have we blocked off the road to the parking area, or just the river walk to that?
The area that we have blocked off currently is just the Riverwalk area. So the parking lot for library attendees and the lower lot for staff, fine.
Okay.
But the ramp that goes down from the Ghost Wilkie statue and the other side over where the pedestrian and railroad crossing, bridge crossing is, that's where we have it blocked off. And that will prevent, hopefully will be enough of a warning for people to avoid that area.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Alderman Thibodeau.
Just for clarity, this emergency repair option, is that just to get us by until a better time to fix it properly? And I don't mean that in any kind of a negative way. Or is this going to be the final repair to that bank?
This repair will be a temporary
Okay.
repair. I mean, I would love it to be, to work so that it was a final repair, but at this point, it's a temporary. The funding that is requested is simply for the temporary repair. Yeah.
Now, do you feel we need a vote on this, or under the ordinances, does the emergency nature of this not necessitate a vote? Okay. All right, and I think you said this, but this thing is threatening a major sewer interceptor, which is a pipe about 5 feet in diameter, 4 or 5 feet in diameter.
84 inches.
Pardon?
84 inches.
84, so 7 feet in diameter. And if that
Slightly big.
collapsed,
That's a lot.
that would be a problem.
Yep. Yep.
Hence the emergency nature of the repair. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We now go to unfinished business, of which we don't have anything. Tabled in committee, nothing. New business resolutions.
R-24-026, authorizing a second amendment to the site lease agreement with New Singular Wireless PCS LLC, successor by merger to AT&T Wireless PSC LLC, regarding the communication tower located at 67 Amherst Street. I'm going to make a motion to recommend final passage.
Yes, and this is self-apparent. It has to do with an amendment of the tower lease, but Miss Bill Mansfield negotiated this. I see that he's not here, so if you have additional questions, we could ask him to come in. If you're comfortable approving it as it is, that's fine also. But the motion is to approve it. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. New business ordinances, we don't have anything. Record of expenditures, Alderman Govea.
I'm going to make a motion that the Finance Committee has compiled with city charter and ordinances pertaining to the record of expenditures for the period of March 1st to March 14th.
All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. General discussion, any general discussion items? Alderwoman Clee.
Thank you, and I just want to thank everybody on the Lock Whitney project moving forward as well as we can under all the circumstances and so on. It's been a long time coming, and it just seems we're finally taking one step forward. I know the people that live in that area and drive in that area are looking forward to the change. To some extent, it's going to change how they drive because of the one-ways, but I am looking forward to see this really upgrade that area. So thank you.
Any other general discussion? Public comment. Any member of the public wish to address the Finance Committee?
We have one
Come on
person.
forward, please. So come up to the podium. Please give your name and address, and you have 3 minutes to discuss your matter.
Hi, my name is Christian Antalix. I live at 23 Temple Street in apartment 301. 301. Sorry, I'm not an orator or well educated, so please bear with me while I figure this out. I've spoken with many community resources in the last few weeks, namely 211 about getting tax help. 211, according to the workers for 211, is underserved. There's no appointments available for anyone who wants tax help until 2025. So if I were to need tax help today, I could not get any help from the city for that until next year. The rapid response crisis line, there was no deployable conditions or workers available until next week as of today. So if someone had a crisis and needs someone to come see them tomorrow, they wouldn't be able to have anyone come see them for multiple cities, including in Nashua, then like they go out to Hudson. So, and then for the, going back to the tax help stuff, they were talking about multiple locations that are like Milford. There's one, I think, down on Temple Street as well, the Senior Center. And then there's another one. All of these stuff that's like, I think is really important, is completely underserved. And then I also spoke with, it was Megan D, maybe, I think her name's Dylan, the co-director of the Public Benefit Project for New Hampshire Legal Aid. And these are all like federally funded like programs, you know what I mean? Like legal aid, they get federal funds. And she didn't want to admit it, but they were underserved too. And the reason why I say this is because she explained over and over again to me that the reason why they deny so many claims or requests for help is because there's not enough money going to these programs. And I think, you know, there's not enough money going to these programs. And then furthermore, I saw you particularly talk about giving $1 to $3 million to for a playground for a Boston company. And you want to put this playground at the public library, which is less than 0.2 of a mile from 23 Temple Street, where there's no less than 10 sexual offenders that live there. So I just wonder, like, we don't have any lights at bus stops. The drivers are complaining about not having enough light to see the riders. You know, we're spending money on software, but we just need lights.
30 seconds.
So we just need lights. We just need like more clinicians. We need more volunteers and people to provide tax help, and we need more legal assistance before we need all this other stuff. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. All right, remarks by Alderman. Any remarks by Alderman? Alderwoman Clee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this time, I'd like to motion to adjourn.
All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
And the meeting of the Finance Committee is adjourned at 7:44 p.m.